Good morning, everybody. My name is Keith Salmon, and welcome to the Million Dollar Story series. Today, I have the privilege and honor to have Lynda Lippin on board with us today from New York City. I am in Santa Monica, California, and the reason for our show, well, good morning, Lynda. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. Lynda is a master Pilates teacher, and she has her business. She's got a lot of things going on, and I think she told me a minute ago that she's already seen 4 clients this morning. So that's going after it, what I would say. So thanks for getting us in, and we got here. I really appreciate you coming on. What I was just about to say was that the whole concept for my Million Dollar Story series is that I believe wholeheartedly is a word that's been going around lately, but I truly believe that everyone has a $1 million story. And I don't mean necessarily a financial $1 million story. It's a story that's right here, a figure of speech, $1 million story, a story that's worth sharing with the world, a story that can move someone into inspiration. And Lynda certainly has one of those. If it's all right with you, Lynda, I'd love to just hear a little bit about your, I would call it a practice, but whatever you would call it in your business. Some people may not be aware of what Pilates even is.
Right. So, as I always tell people, Pilates is a form of exercise. This form of exercise happened to be invented by a man named Joseph Pilates back during World War I was when he put the practice fully together. Joseph Pilates was German, and he was interned by the British as an enemy alien. So he spent pretty much all of World War I and a chunk of time after that war, because Britain didn't let go of the internees until after Germany made its first reparations payment after the war, and that took them about another year and a half, right? So he spent all of his time in an internment camp on the Isle of Man. He was there through the Spanish flu epidemic, and he realized while he was there that they were going to become out of shape and really mentally unwell if people didn't start exercising. So he developed, what we now know as the Pilates mat work, which you can do relatively quickly in a pretty small space and allows you to get a very good full body workout. He then, after the war, he went back to Germany. He wasn't very happy with the way things were going politically and economically within Germany. Nat Fleischer, the boxing promoter, actually sponsored him to come over to the U.S. So there's a little unknown historical connection between Joseph Pilates and the boxing community. And he came to New York. The legend goes that he met his wife Clara, who was on the boat with him, and he came to New York and opened his Pilates studio. He calls it Contrology. He invented all of these interesting equipment contraptions, which you've been in the studio, the Universal Reformer and the Cadillac and all of these things that were all based on using springs for resistance. So very, very kind of simple. I used to be able to teach during power outages here in the US. I could teach during hurricanes when I was in the Caribbean because we didn't need power for the apparatus. It's human powered. So, and people did better. And he was very, very lucky. He was near dance studios. He got a lot of dancers in. Then he started to get a lot of the arts patrons in. So that brought him the Gimbels and the Bergdorfs and the Vanderbilts. And then he had a little money behind him. He opened the first kind of high-end store spa when he had a studio in Bergdorf back in the day. One of his trainees, Kathy Grant, ran that, and then she was at Tisch School of the Arts until she died a little while ago. And he really was this brilliant, though slightly crazy, inventor. And he would just, people would come to him with a problem and he would invent a piece of apparatus to fix it. And when we move to today, what we find today is that there's still a slew of people teaching Pilates. Most of us can trace back to Joe himself because, it wasn't that long ago. So most of us can trace back to an elder or somebody we learned from who worked directly with Joseph Pilates. All of the apparatus is still being built, both by the original company, Gratz, in Long Island City here, who built Joseph Pilates equipment for him back in the day. And then there's a whole slew of other companies. Some of the apparatus has been changed, resized, 5 springs instead of 4, all kinds of stuff. But it's still Pilates. And the fact is that it works. It works on core stabilization, back stabilization. It works on torso strength and then full body strength and flexibility out of that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And who doesn't need that?
Right. Exactly. Well, that's really awesome that you have such a historical knowledge of it. I love the history of things like that because it seems like it was so long ago, but it's like you said, the lineage is very kind of close. It's not that far.
And when I've worked, I've had clients who are kind of major inventors, like the man who invented the Steadicam. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. He so loved being in the studio and working on the apparatus because he was like, how did he invent this? His scientist, inventor brain would pop in and be like, I can just see where somebody had this problem. And he was like, I have to invent something to deal with that.
Right. I had a limited amount of Pilates experience when I had this right shoulder had an issue. Went to an orthopedic, looked at the MRI and said, we got 2 choices. We can go into surgery next week, or we can do some physical therapy. I had never gone through any physical therapy, but I couldn't throw a ball. I couldn't play tennis. I don't really play tennis, but
right. But if you wanted to,
yeah. But I realized when I was like throwing the ball with the kids, I'd always played baseball. It was like, this was really kind of nasty. I went in a double, I was seeing progress after the first sessions, but what we did a series of things, but they put me on the table and they had an amazing, it's a complex joint, but it was an amazing isolated exercise that I was seeing results like so fast that we went on a double prescription on it, and I avoided the surgery altogether. And
that's great.
Yeah.
And that actually happens a surprising amount. And what's very interesting is that, there tends to be, we tend to like to make divisions, right? Where there's like rehab Pilates and then there's fitness Pilates, but there's really not that big of a difference. Mm-hmm. Sometimes my clients will say, well, if I didn't have this problem, would you be doing anything different with me? And I was like, actually, no. We would still be progressing through the same exercises. Obviously, if somebody has a hip replacement or, scoliosis or osteoporosis or something, we modify just like you would in anything.
Of course.
And I'm also a certified fitness professional. I've been a personal trainer for many years. And I find that, Pilates works really well with everything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting when you were saying when Joseph Pilates was saying, look, if everybody's going to sit around and not do any exercise, we're going to be in trouble here. It sounds familiar. So it sounds a little familiar to what's going on right now. There's a lot of people that have fallen off the exercise hamster wheel, and I'm sure that presents opportunity for some people.
Yeah, I mean, COVID has really been a struggle, right, on both sides. Mm-hmm. So you've got the fact that, like here in New York City, Pilates studios were just allowed to reopen at the beginning of this month with, city inspections, changes to the HVAC units, tons of social distancing, no classes, and studios only at 33% of capacity.
Right.
And I still have, a lot of my clients are older, they're immune compromised. I'll be 54 actually next week, and I've got some immune issues myself. So I was not in a huge hurry actually to jump back into the studio with anybody. I then started teaching online, and I've been teaching online and digitally for actually more than 10 years. We spent about 6 years living in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And when I was there, I was the Pilates and fitness teacher at Parrot Key Resort. and that is an A-list private island resort and spa. And basically, to get any of my work out of that island or off that island, I had to do it online or do it digitally. So I started recording audios and videos for my clients to take with them when they were traveling in other places. I started seeing people back then via Skype, with really no way of recording it. Social media had just started. Instagram wasn't even a thing yet. And right. I kind of went with that. So when this hit, I was really well situated because I was already teaching people online. I was already kind of doing that. I saw the value in it. But I have to tell you, Keith, that for years and years, people in the Pilates community really talked down about doing work online. They said you couldn't do it, you couldn't cue properly, you had to have hands-on. And now you want to know something, most of those people figured it out and they're teaching online because you have to.
I think it's just out of necessity comes invention, and you can, if you have to figure it out, you'll figure it out. But I mean, my industry is a completely different industry, but there was, technology online. We used to have to do things. We used to have to put things in a FedEx and overnight it.
Right.
Or we'd have to have people in the office, which is still my preference. However, the technology says that I can create an edit and someone can be watching it virtually. We're talking virtually. I mean, this wasn't available to us 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
And the whole idea, unless we had a satellite. I mean, I would, if I was in your city, if I was in New York, sometimes we would have to run it. I was working for West Coast, both, working on, say, television commercials or something like that, that an agency needed to see something. We would have to run to the Empire State Building to get it up on the satellite.
To get the satellite, yeah.
And that was expensive, and it was, boy, if you missed your 10-minute window, you had to wait, and it was just not that long ago. That was not that long ago.
Exactly. And then I also find on the client side that kind of at the beginning of this, a lot of my studio clients were like, I don't know if we can do this online. Can we really do this online? 6 months later, they're all doing just fine.
Right.
They're doing the work online. Some of them have Pilates apparatus, some of them don't. But I'll tell you something, with the mat, some furniture, I use ottomans, I use whatever people have, some right. Free weights, some bands, we can figure it out and people still get a great workout. And the mat by itself is still a great workout. And that was, his original, we can do this in the internment camp.
Right.
We can do this at home. So for me, it's been great because some of my clients are older. Some of them live by themselves. They tend to get depressed if they're by themselves too often. And so they see me 3 times a week and they get really good exercise in. They're not having neck pain. They're not having back pain, and they're feeling better and they're doing well. And now I actually coach other Pilates teachers.
Right.
And how to comfortably pivot online, run online programs, comfortably tell their stories via live video. I always tell people, be the coffee shop version of yourself, right? Whenever people meet me live, they're like, actually, you're just like you are on video. And I was like, well, who else would I be?
I just did a teaching yesterday when I went all the way back to Nanook of the North, the documentary.
Yeah.
And I call it the first reality television show, even though there was no such thing as television. But, he went and reshot that film. And when Nanook became aware of the camera, he turned into somebody else. He turned into on-camera Nanook and did a little acting. And, we'll go into that story another time. But it became something that traveled with me in terms of all of the on-camera training that I have done and directing. There's consulting, there's coaching, and my world comes from directing, and then it's kind of reverse engineering into coaching for our online, what we're talking about is people turn into, even high-level executives turn into either robots or school children or whatever. They turned into somebody else when the camera goes on.
Right. Yeah. And you can't effectively teach anything
Oh, no.
if
Yeah.
you're doing that. Like, I want my Pilates teacher clients to understand that their clients can have the same experience they have with them in the studio.
Right.
It's very funny when they go, but I hate doing live video and I hate this. And I'm like, I bet when you first started teaching Pilates, you hated standing up in front of a group and teaching live. Like, do we all remember what it was like when we taught the first Pilates private, or the first time you had more than 10 people walk into a class with you, or any of these other things? It was scary. Sometimes you had to have a script with you and something written down. And that was fine because everybody knew you were training and knew, that who you were. And I'm like, if you're just open with people, hey, I'm here and I'm getting used to this live and online stuff, but I want to share something of value with you today that I think will help you moving forward. I'm like, no one's gonna be like, ew.
Right. The best medicine sometimes is to say, hey, I'm a little nervous. All of a sudden it's like, whoa, okay.
Exactly. Because we're human beings and we can do hard things. We all made it through school.
Right.
We all made it through learning new stuff. And realistically, as Pilates professionals or fitness professionals, we talk to strangers all day, all the time. We're in the studio, new people come in, they walk in off the street. Can I take a private? Sure, you can. When I worked in the hotel, it was, strangers all day, all the time, until I was there for more than a year and then had some repeat guests. But in general, it was always new people. Half the time, new people who didn't speak English. So, that made it even more fun.
That's
and
awesome.
You just get used to going out there and performing. And once I kind of wrapped my own head around the fact that when I'm online, I'm not talking to the masses. I'm talking to my clients.
Right.
Whether I'm teaching Pilates and talking to my Pilates clients, whether I'm teaching something about serving online and I'm talking to my Pilates teachers, I'm talking to them. I don't have to worry about the 6 million other people who are online.
Right, exactly. That's well said. Now, let me get to something that this is kind of the core of I care about what you do. I love what you do, but I care even more about why you do it. And what I'm hoping for everyone that I talk to is that if they see enough stories and they see the story that resonates with them at the right time and they're ready to receive that story of inspiration, I'd like to know why you got into this, because you're clearly passionate about it. And if somebody out there watching is like on the fence about, can I do something like that? It seems like I'd always wanted to do it, but maybe I'm not cut out for it. Maybe this is for other people who have more money. Maybe it's for people who've just have more on-camera experience. There's lots of reasons to talk yourself out of something.
Yes.
But there's that magic moment when you may say something right now that's going to say, hey, that's it. That speaks to me. So I'd like to know how what was that magic moment for you that got you into being as good as what you do as a master Pilates instructor? How did that happen?
I actually started out as a Pilates client, with the way most of us do. And I started out as a Pilates client actually when I was an undergrad at SUNY Purchase. We had a dedicated Pilates studio on campus. Student government was running the Pilates studio, mid-'80s, and I was the VP of finance for student government. So I pretty much went in to just check it out, see what they were doing with the money, what the equipment looked like. I had no idea what this was, pretty much like anybody else. And I loved it. Loved it. I loved the exercise part of it. I liked the stretching. I thought the equipment was interesting, and I just kept going. And we were subsidized a little bit because our student activity fees were helping to pay for the studio. And I just kept going. And then I entered into a PhD philosophy program at Temple. So I moved to Philly. And about a year in, there was an ad in the city paper that said part-time exercise instructors wanted, Pilates background preferred.
Oh,
And I was
cool.
like, huh, why not? So I go in, I was the only person to apply who knew Pilates and recognized the equipment. I got the job. And it was working with a fabulous woman who still teaches, who's been teaching for about 50 years now, and Karen Carlson. And I worked with her for a number of years. And while I was working with her, I got my full certification. You know, I kept moving forward kind of in that process of getting clients. And then I had a client who wanted to open a studio. And so in the 90s, we went into business together, and I opened a studio that still exists on the main line of Philadelphia. And I kind of went from there. You know, I stayed in graduate school. I didn't just let that go. But Pilates went from being my part-time gig to my full-time gig. Pilates also got me through a number of car accidents, hysterectomy, shoulder issues, you know, all kinds of stuff. And I also watched my clients continue to get better. I inadvertently ended up working with a lot of women who were breast cancer survivors, who were dealing with mastectomy issues, a lot of folks, a lot of golfers, you know, given where I was on the main line of Philly, we had a lot of golfers who had back pain and arthritis and other issues, a lot of joint replacements. And so I really started, just because I think of where we were, working with a lot of folks who had chronic health issues, pain and orthopedic issues, and they all got better. And I'm a big fan of things that are not that hard to do and that make us better. You know, I just, like, the number of people who continue on in behaviors that don't make them any better and are really expensive is beyond me. Like, just from that base level. And I just kept going with that, you know, and it was ultimately through a client on the main line that we got to the Caribbean. And then, you know, and then when I came back to New York City in 2011, I had enough clients who, from working in the hotel, who lived in New York, and just came in as a master teacher at Real Pilates, which is one of the most preeminent studios in the country, let alone in New York. And it's, you know, the journey for me has been really interesting, because I thought I was going to be a philosophy professor, by the way. Like, this was like the part-time gig. But as I started to really work with it, I realized that I really loved it, that I loved teaching Pilates, that I loved what it did for people, that people really liked engaging with me, that there was money to be made. And then once I started teaching online and having that piece of it, that really kind of expanded my reach, got me working more with other Pilates teachers. And I was so happy when this whole COVID thing hit that I had already made that pivot, you know, and was comfortable working that way. It's kind of interesting. I find that there are folks I've met who teach Pilates but really don't love it. And they end up, you know, not being great teachers, frankly, because you can see that they're not invested.
Right.
My clients love working with me because I'm fully invested in them and in them feeling better, looking better, being more functional, being more stable and strong.
Well, it's in your spirit. I can tell that from across the country. I can tell that. So
I think that, you know, for clients, I think it's a matter of finding the teacher who you really like, first of all. And frankly, a good way to do that right now is just going on social media, checking out Pilates teachers in your area. You know, you can search geographically, you can search it however you want to. But all of us have, I mean, pretty much everyone who's teaching online right now or in the studio has videos online, has some live videos, has videos on Instagram, has podcast interviews like this. You know, you can find out about us and see who we are. For the teachers who aren't doing that, that's sad for them, because folks who are looking for somebody online will find us via things like this.
Well, I do think it's like you were saying, that it's almost a social aspect. There's accountability, there's social aspect of just having conversation and counselor. There's it's like such a personal relationship that you have with people. That's it does take the right. You've got to find the right person that you could just talk to. Somebody, I'm sure that you've had this experience a million times when things, even besides the physical aspect of it, they could be having a crummy time in their life, and they come in and they may confide in you, and even though they get their exercise in, they'll walk out living a better life because they've spent 45 minutes or an hour with you. And that's a gift, right?
It is. And I try to explain this to my Pilates teacher clients all the time. I'm like, this is a gift. Like, we are helping people feel better. I mean, I've had clients with spinal cord injury who were dancing at their weddings. That's, how good does that feel? For everybody. They feel great because they're dancing at their wedding. I feel great because they went from hobbling in on their crutches to dancing at their wedding, right? And that's a huge thing that we give to people. Most Pilates teachers don't realize that gift. Most Pilates teachers don't realize that if they're teaching, even as an independent contractor, that they're business people and entrepreneurs, and they need to put their big girl pants on and treat it as such. A lot of my clients on the Pilates teacher side will say that to me. They'll be like, it never occurred to me that I was an entrepreneur.
Right.
I've had teachers use the phrase, I'm an employee independent contractor. I'm like, no. That's not a thing. You're either an employee, where your employer is taking care of all your payroll taxes and dealing with your insurance and all of that, or you're an entrepreneur, independent contractor, in which case it's your business and treat it as your business.
Right.
So that's kind of where I've moved now, because that's the one piece, Keith, that was missing for me in almost my entire Pilates career. I ran successful studios. I don't know how, frankly, when I look back on it, because I had no idea what I was doing, none. So this is where, I've taken it really upon myself, especially in this last year, to get the business side of things, to get the actually, how do you do this? How do you make sales? What's the difference between sales and marketing? How do you connect with people? Should I be an LLC or an S Corp? All those kind of basic things that no one in the Pilates business teaches. And frankly, from the time I did my cert before me up until now, what everybody's being told is that the best thing you can do with your Pilates certification is open your own studio. And then once you open your own studio, you'll basically work like a dog until you can't do it anymore. And then you'll either go into teacher training and train more teachers to work with you, or hire teachers or bring in contractors to work with you in your space. And that's as good as it gets, right? There's a huge ceiling there. It's a relatively low ceiling, because the only way you scale that is by working more hours, hiring more people, or opening more physical studios with all that entails. And when I finally found out that actually there's other ways of scaling business, and especially now with online, there's fully other ways of running a business and scaling a business that work well, that work over the course of time. But you just have to learn the systems and the processes that go with it. And for me, I just turned my brain and I said, okay, You learned all the systems and the processes of working with other human beings and teaching Pilates and teaching fitness and teaching whatever else. And now you're going to wrap your brain around learning the systems and the processes of business and how you run a business. And then I took that knowledge, and that's now what I'm teaching to the Pilates teaching community is you don't have to be stuck in that studio place, that you can create a scalable, functional business online, and that what we do is valuable and you deserve to get paid well for the valuable things that you do.
Right. Well, you're a messenger of good news for people who've been told, no, you can't. And
right.
You're saying, yes, you can. And here's how,
Exactly.
You've mastered the skill, and you engrossed yourself in the knowledge, learning, and then once you learn it, you can pass it on. I mean, it's an entrepreneur trap that everyone does get involved in if they believe what they're told from the conventional wisdom.
Exactly. And I also find, that I teach a lot for free. Now, I don't do that in the sense that I take tons of clients on that don't pay me or anything like that. But like in my free Pilates Profit Lab group on Facebook, and folks can just go to pilatesprofitlab.com to find out more about that and get into that. But within that group, right, about every 6 to 8 weeks, I run a free workshop, and it is a solid, I call it a 5-day workshop, but with the 4 bonus days. A solid 9 days of daily live content. Every lecture is between 40 minutes and an hour and 20 minutes, depending on what I'm talking about and how long I decide to go. But I literally teach, like, you can leave that free workshop and bootstrap it and put a good online Pilates business together based on it. Of course, do I use it as a vehicle to bring people over into my Pilates Teacher Mastermind VIP coaching group? Yeah, I do. But even for the folks who don't, I'm like, just hang out in the free group and I'll keep sharing free information and it will be fine. Every day I try to share some an informational video free all over my social media accounts with some good lesson for Pilates teachers who are trying to pivot online and teach clients and market and do all of that. And I think, it's important that we recognize that the more we're out there and the more we tell our stories and the more we speak to everybody and the more we serve for free, not just sell, but serve. I feel like the selling should almost be like, by the time I pivot in my Pilates Profit Lab to anything regarding sales, they've already had 4 or 5 solid days of education, about 5 hours of learning and lecture. And by the time I start talking about the program, half of the group is like, do you have a program? Could we work with you more? How again do we do more of this? Because we need more of this. Right. And then I'm like, in fact, you can have more of this, and here's where it is. But I don't get there by just spamming people and pounding people with messages that they don't want to hear. As you said earlier, even for folks who are listening to this, you're going to get something out of it if you're ready to get something out of it, right? We don't see or hear the things until we're ready to see or hear the things.
It's all timing. It's all timing for where you're at and where they are. And if you keep showing up, they'll either come around or not, but you're still giving them value, and that makes the world go around.
Exactly. And I think people just need to do more of that, just more of that kind of sharing, and not just this. You're on LinkedIn, right? Most of us are on LinkedIn. And how many times do you get a connection request? You accept the connection request from whatever market it is, and they immediately send you a message trying to sell you something that you don't need. And that if the person had spent 2 seconds looking at your profile, they would have realized that you still may be a useful connection, right, but they wouldn't have wasted that 5 minutes
right,
that it took to try to sell you something you don't need. It amazes me. I'm like, why are you trying to sell me that? Have you looked at my profile? I'm not. That's my response now. I literally go, look at my profile. I'm not your ICA.
Right.
And I'm happy to be connected with you and thank you, but don't waste your time.
Right.
I'm
Well,
not your client.
It's one of those things where I kind of remind myself, because I come from advertising. I point over here this way. There's a big giant TV up there, so I'm sorry, I do that where I point use visual aids in my office here. But if they're selling cars, they're going to run a car ad, and it's not for me unless I need a car. So
Right.
it's part of our world that we don't have to violently object to them because we couldn't watch football or tennis or anything if there weren't that type of advertising.
Right.
So for me, I if it's an annoying commercial, half of it's entertainment, half of it's understanding photography and connection, and then all of a sudden it's like, if you go back into history, I love the history of things. When Bob Hope would say Pepsodent 100,000 times, one day you're going to be in there and you go, Pepsodent, and you're just
right.
It's not subliminal or anything like that. It's just like, you got to do it enough times, so we have to present ourselves enough times. And God bless those LinkedIn people. That's just how it has to go. They could, I feel the same thing when they go, what are you guys, this has got to be either a mistake or, I get all excited because for a split second I go, maybe this is for me. And I go, and I look, this isn't for me at all. and it's like, wow,
I had one this morning that was offering me a way to start exercising from home.
Oh,
not even to start teaching exercise from home, but to start exercising from home. And I was like, wait, what? and it was from a fellow Pilates professional, even better.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I just thought, and I was like, okay, trying to sell this to me is a time suck for you.
Right. Well,
so I'm letting you know now.
Yeah. So I love that you've got, I believe that your story of how you use Pilates to, like you said, you kind of just brushed off on it, but I think that's a huge part of your story, that you got through car accidents, other health issues. You've lived this type of rehabilitation and strengthening, and the story of the person coming in, not able to walk but dancing at his wedding and type of things like that, or her wedding, I'm not sure. But those stories of how you lived it gives you just that real life experience that is transformational. If you share that with someone else, it's like, look, this is real. This isn't something I read in a book. This is real.
Exactly.
I love that part of your story that you're kind of a little bit humble about, which is awesome. I was talking to someone who, it was interesting. I read a post in a group I don't know, last week or something like that, and said something about, like, list one thing that you love about yourself. And somebody in there said, I am so humble. I have so much humility. I'm like, wait a second there. don't and it took everything I had to not respond. It's like, listen, well, I think you know where I'm going with that, but that's not one that you list. But I'm just
right.
I'm
very humble.
I'm listing it for you. I thought that was it was great that you didn't you haven't taken so much credit for it. You are serving the people. Who knows? There's people in those things that you're serving that part of the population in your group has maybe people who just aren't able to do it or make the commitment, but you're still giving them some great value. And you, like you said, they could walk out and try it, and then they try it and they go, oh, there's really something to this, and they'll come back to you and say, I've been watching you and I thank you. And then all of a sudden, you've made a difference in someone's life, and that's what it's all about. I think
that's what I've even noticed from the Pilates teachers who follow me now, or who are joining my group now. Most of them have been following me online for 7 years. And that's the other thing that I tell, my teacher clients is like, look, there's a know, like, and trust factor here. And online, you really have to be consistent and be there. And then I'll say to them, how many of you followed me for 5 years before you bought anything from me, by the way? As they're all freaking out because only 10 people liked their thing and nobody bought anything. And I'm like, yeah, and how long have you been listening to me talk about this? How long has this been going on? And then they're like, right. Or, they're running their own programs. And I think, as well as I do, everybody who's going to buy buys at the last day, like 3 hours before the deadline, right? It's just human nature. It's how we are. And then they're like, no one's buying anything. And I'm like, just wait till like 8:59 on the day that the cart closes at midnight or the discount ends, and they'll be there.
Well, it's like if you imagine you're at the grocery store and they're making the announcement, the store will be closing in 5 minutes, and everyone's walking around with empty shopping carts, and there's going to be a few that come up and they go, I knew I was going to buy, I knew I was going to do it, but they need to wait the last minute.
Right.
Like it's human nature. Would you like to speak a little bit about your is it master? Am I pronouncing it right? Your mastery, online mastery of your teacher.
My teacher trained Pilates teacher mastermind.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is that's also kind of an interesting story because it's a program I actually started last summer, and I started it purely as an online continuing education group for Pilates teachers, right? So what I basically promised in terms of deliverable was 2 workshops a month online. And then I had, professional continuing education credits that went with that. And it, went okay, but I kind of had my initial, group of members, and then it never really shifted. As, we came closer to this kind of COVID moment and everything started to shift online, that's when I realized that Pilates teachers really needed a boost. So I changed the program to be a 1-year program. And I kept all of the Pilates teacher training videos in it. So there's basically 48 hours of teacher training video in there on everything from osteoporosis to back pain and neck pain and neurological disorders and, all kinds of things, all the things, with the continuing education credits still. But then I started a business track in there. So we're actually the first group to join it in this current year is finishing their Pilates Profit Lab Quick Start right now. And that is basically a 10-week hold by the hand walkthrough of getting your online presence, creating your digital program, naming your digital program, doing an online launch workshop, how to get through that, and how to get through all of these steps to get people into your world, serve them, and then, be able to sell them a product. And one of my ladies just finished her free workshop. She only had a group of a little over 70 people, and she sold 2 spots.
That's awesome.
Which, at a normal, as what I know now with my business brain, at a sales conversion rate of 2.5% to 5%, is well in the 2.5% to 5% range when she has a group of under 100. So that's what I do now. The group, people can go to PilatesTeacherMastermind.com or LyndaLippin.com because it's all there. And that I do ongoing rolling admissions into the 1-year program, so people can come in and start week 1, whenever they want to. But I also run a free Pilates Profit Lab workshop in a group on Facebook that, again, I do about every 6 weeks. I'm actually, next weekend, I'm going to be doing a 2-day boot camp where I just re-show all of the videos that I did in the last workshop and do a quick, very fast binge training. When I do that, I tend to run a little discount on the VIP program and bring people, into it that way so that they get a good, not even a taste, but a good appetizer.
Right.
of what I'm teaching there, and then kind of move into the program. But that for me is such a labor of love now. My husband even mentions to me how excited I get when I'm teaching that and working with those people. And the deliverables are really high there. They meet with me group-wise twice a month for what I call a chat and mat. So we're doing Pilates and talking business. They get, a private with me every quarter, access to all the old teacher training videos and the workshops and, all kinds of stuff. And it's been great. I'm really enjoying it, and the teachers in it are doing really well.
That's awesome. That is terrific. I mean, you're tapped in. you're a live wire.
I just want to, I want to spread kind of the word, and I want to get as many Pilates teachers as possible, not reliant on studio for all of their business.
Right.
Because look, we don't know when this is going to be over. This could be another solid year, frankly, before anyone's really comfortable. And it could happen again. I mean, people keep talking about herd immunity and all this other stuff, and I'm like, we don't even have that for the Spanish flu yet. We don't even have that for the flu yet, which is why we have to have a new vaccine every year, right? And people still get sick and die from the disease. So I'm not one of those people who's just going to sit at home, but I'm also not one of those people who believes that this is all going to be cleared up in 6 months.
Right.
And I feel like future planning is where we need to be. And look, if studios reopen and I have this fabulous online program and I see people live, great.
Well, I think it's similar to all the stay-at-home, business, just regular business. Is there a lot of people aren't going back to the office, but the business will still be there. So it's just another way. It's just another era. We're in a new era.
Right. And I feel like, you can sit there. So many Pilates studios are closing here in New York. People are just freaking out. Like, I'm never going to be able to do this. How can I teach Pilates under these conditions? And I'm like, pivot, like change in your brain the way you're thinking about this. Try some online training. Try teaching some, if you're not comfortable teaching online sessions, take some online sessions.
Right.
Everybody's teaching online sessions. You can take online sessions with the best in the business. You can take class right now with, teachers that you would never be able to get a class with live because their classes are always packed.
Right.
Or you're not in the same city they are. We are all teaching classes online right now. So I think it's the time to try it as a client first, and then, see how comfortable you are teaching that way. Frankly, I can get somebody to put their phone right next to their pelvis if I need them to, so I can see how they're moving. I tell people I can be in a position in relationship to their bodies that would be completely inappropriate in any kind of public studio setting.
Right.
And then people would be like, what is she doing? But I can have you set your phone up so that I can see you from that angle and see exactly what you're doing in a way that I couldn't actually if I was seeing you live. So there are times when I think it's almost better. And I've got a few clients now who are buying equipment, because the other piece of all these studios closing is there's a lot of used Pilates equipment on the market, and Pilates equipment doesn't devalue because it's literally metal, wood, and springs. Maybe you have to reupholster. That's like the biggest thing. But other than that, the equipment's always fine.
Wow. That's great. Well, one of the things, or I should say 3 of the things that I teach is clarity, confidence, and connection. And Lynda, you've got all of that. So
thanks.
Thank you so much for coming on our show here, the $1 Million Story series. So what would be really great is that if you could send me, we'll move this video around, and if any of the links that you want to put in, like of your studios or your master classes, and I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but
I'll PM them to you on Messenger. Yeah,
that would be great, and we'll put those in there, and we'll get some people to be inspired. And it's like when you were saying, what do I do? I don't think I could do this. Well, one of the things is, well, watch me. Watch you.
Yeah.
Lynda. This is what I'm doing. And you always want to emulate someone who's doing it. And if it's somebody who's doing it well, I mean, you're doing a great service to those people who are coming up and thinking that, oh, I'm not going to get, this, why is this happening to me? Well, it's happening to everyone. So we all have to pivot.
Right. And you just have to pivot. I mean, I did the same thing actually with the coach that I work with now, right? I took Kelly Roach's live launch workshop free, right, in her Facebook group. And I took it once. And then I said, I want to see if this works on my own with no other coaching. And I did it. And I sold more spots into my VIP program after doing that than I had before. And then I was like, oh. So then she offered it again. And I did it again. And then, of course, she offered a little kind of special offer for the folks who were doing the live. And then I jumped because I was like, something, you have already made me money. Mm-hmm. You have already helped me and served me so much in 6 weeks with no money.
Right. It's an investment,
Yeah. And then it becomes a no-brainer investment. I was like, well, who else would I work with?
Right. Well, that's awesome. Well, we're going to wrap it up now. I appreciate it. I could talk to you all morning, and I know that you probably have another 6 or 8 clients in the next couple of hours.
I just have one. Just one more, and then I'm done.
Awesome. Well, Lynda Lippin. I'm pronouncing your last name right? Lynda Lippin.
You are. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming onto the $1 Million Story series episode today. I am Keith Salmon from Keith Salmon Coaching, and I have a group a Facebook group called the $1 Million Story Ninjas, where I love to work with you with your stories. There's a lot of people, like we were just talking with Lynda. Lynda's got a great story to share. I know that a lot of people have a little trouble finding their story and understanding that it's got value to other people. And that's what we do in that group, is we work on that. I've been working with people for many, many years on their stories through the advertising and film and documentary world, and bringing that to a different format here on the online space. And entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs, kind of especially, I advocate for the underdog who has been told no, you can't for all their life, potentially, possibly, and I say yes, you can. And so I'd love you to join that group, the $1 Million Story Ninja group. So with that, again, Lynda, thanks so much for taking the time to help. What this whole thing is all about is to get someone to watch at the right time and inspire them to take a leap forward in their lives and in their business. And you can certainly help a lot of people, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. So have a great weekend, and safe and sound, and everybody be careful out there on the West Coast. Our hearts, I'm on the West Coast, and it's a little bit of clean air today for the first time.
Oh, that's good.
So, but I'm over here by the beach, and there's still lots of trouble out there in the fires and so on and so forth. So our thoughts are with you. So thanks again, Lynda, and we will see you in the Ethernet. Okay?
Yes.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.